hear God's word. Lord, we want to thank you for Easter and for what it was as we celebrated the death and resurrection of Christ. As we continue to share through CSI the cross investigation scene, we want to pray that you will speak to each and every one of us. For those still on the way, as we join up together and talk through this, may you bless us, Lord. May the heavens be open today. May you give me a good voice to share your word. And may what you have to share with each and every one of us come out clearly today. So thank you, Almighty God. In Jesus' name, amen. So welcome to Cross Sin Investigation. This is what we have been sharing for those of you who, again, have not met me. Part of what I do is I run an organization called Transform Nations. And we have three areas where we do some programs. One is masculinity. We do some programs for boys. And I'll be telling you more about that before we finish the series. We do something for men. All the men who have done Man Enough. 1, 2, 3. Yes, those are the men who are Man Enough. The rest are also Man Enough, just that they have not graduated officially. But we have seen more than 5,000 men in the last 3 years graduate out of Man Enough. This is not just in Kenya, but in the region as well. And that has been a wonderful experience for me. But we also do some programs for fathers, for leaders, and for community transformation. That's what I do. And my wife is here, Sophia. If you would just stand and wave. Yeah, that's my wife. Some of you know her. We've been married for quite a while, and she has been a great blessing. I'm still enjoying her pancakes almost 18 years later. Well, I want to share with us today God's word. Last week we had a wonderful time. I don't know how many of you were here. We had a nice production that we all enjoyed. We loved it. And we saw how we identify with some of the characters around the cross. In fact, the actors here made us realize that we could be Judases as well. We could be all of those characters around the cross. And then we shared about the resurrection, gave some evidence, some pointers to why this must have happened, and produced some evidence around that. The resurrection, and talked about why that was important or is significant to us. There's one event in the Christian faith that is important, that it's like the fulcrum of the faith, is the death and resurrection of Christ, which is Easter. Our takeout last week was from the popular song, "Because He Lives, I Can Face Tomorrow." As we are now in April, and we begin to feel some of our dreams are not really going out in the way that we wanted. Some of the things we wanted, we don't have them yet. We don't have a dude, we don't have a lady, it doesn't seem like we're going to have a wedding. It doesn't look like the money we wanted is coming. We remember that because Jesus resurrected, because He lives, we can face tomorrow. We have the power and presence of the resurrected Savior to face anything in life. Now, I'm really excited about today, and it's going to be a wonderful conversation. But before I get into this, we're going to investigate one of the characters around the cross that is least known. We just talk about him in passing. We're going to look at the background, do an Olivia Pop on him. We're going to look at just some of the facts around this character and what that means to us. But before I jump into that, Mavunites, do you love movies? I know some of you watch a lot of movies over this. Now, I'd like for you to turn to your neighbor and tell them, which is your favorite movie? The movie you love really a lot. Sana. And why? Why do you love that movie? What's the storyline? And feel free to talk about some Nigerian movies or whatever it is you like. Just feel free to talk about it. Talk to your neighbor. Which is the movie you like most? Your favorite movie, and why? You have a minute, but don't take all the minute to explain. Don't explain the characters. Don't get emotional about it. It's just a movie. Share it with someone. All right, all right. Okay. How many of you love action movies? Let me see. Action movies. Wow. Many of us, including ladies. How many of you like Nigerian movies? You know, they're just dramatic. Uh, Ranja, I thought you liked Nigerian movies. I mean, uh, usually I can't really stand them. You know, I just look at it, the jealousy, the witchcraft, and all of that, and I'm lost. I don't even know. I mean, I love the accent, but I don't know. But once in a while, I find Sophie watching a few of them. And she just tells me, I want to see how to pray for Nigeria and other issues in the continent. But really, I usually just go to do other things. But how many of you love drama? Just generally, you're attracted to drama movies. All right. How many of you love comedy? Especially romantic comedy. Some of you, I know that's your season in life. I mean, I love movies and I love action movies. And I think why we love movies is because they tell our story. It's really about us. We see ourselves in those characters. I love action movies, of course. And I love when the good guy comes in, beats up the bad guys. In fact, my latest favorite is The Equalizer. How many of you have watched The Equalizer? I mean, I love it when the bad guy just comes in. You know that movie, The Equalizer. There are some bad guys. They're doing bad things. You know, they have imprisoned some girls, and there's this innocent girl, beautiful looking girl, and she's in trouble. She's being misused by a cartel of guys. And then this guy, and he wasn't really into it. He was just doing his thing, and he just felt compelled to be able to do something. Comes in as a rescuer, beats up those guys. You know, I don't advocate for violence, but I was saying amen as some of those bad guys were taken out. I mean, this is just bad, what they were doing. And the hero comes in, rescues everyone. It's like in every movie, action movie, there's an intervention. Some intervention comes in, and the situation which was bad or going south gets rescued. And a lot of us, at the end of it, we clap, we celebrate, because this really tells about our story. You know what, good people? We were designed for good. There's a desire in each and every one of us to see things going well. You know, that's why we love, we're created and placed in Eden, a beautiful garden. That's why I love to go to the coast in Malindi for holiday and just be there, look at the oceans, the sandy beaches, and really just enjoy it. I don't know your holiday destination, but I love good places. I don't come from Pastor Omolo's place, but I love good things. I love a good place where I could relax. There's a desire in each and every one of us to have good life. I love order. That's why traffic for me really gets me. I just love order. When everybody is driving everywhere, I just begin to pray that God will change Kenyans. Everybody loves order, beauty, nice lawns, beautiful oceans, fruitful gardens. We love it. There's something in us that was blessed that longs for what is good. Well, you may not love holidays. What about relationships? Don't you love it when you just have someone you really love? They send you a text early in the morning and says, I just want you to know you're wonderful to me, you're precious, you're a jewel, you're really just a lot to me. And you enjoy it. You look at it, you smile, and you walk on the street smiling. People think you're crazy, but really, you're feeling good because of a relationship going well. We love when relationships are going well. That's why, for many of us who do counseling, then we get a lot of calls. We become shrinks, listening to people. They want to know, how can I fix my relationship? How can I get my boyfriend to like me again? How can I, someone called me the other day and say, is there a prayer I could pray to make my boyfriend to come back to me? Would you write it to me and send to me? I said, come to church. I said, no, I don't want church. I just want my boyfriend back. Many of us just want our relationships to go great. Want to relate well with our parents, with our dads, with our girlfriends. Want our marriages to work well. We feel bad when things are not going well relationally. We were created for harmony in relationships. What about relationship with God? There are times I feel far from God. There are times I feel like, God, you're not really listening to me. There are times I feel like God is out of town. Once in a while, I just feel like, it's rained and it's poured in my life. And I'm just wondering, where is God? And I pray and I feel like it's bouncing back to me, just off the ceiling. I don't like those times. I don't like those dry times. I love it when I come for worship night and I feel like God is just here. I love it when I come to church and I feel like God had his attention on me. I love it. We long for that, a good relationship with God. Hey, we were designed for good. We want good life. We want good relationships. We want good relationship with God. But guess what has happened? We've been damaged by sin. Sin God has broken. Since Adam, sin God has broken. And it didn't just affect us, it affected everything around us. Tsunamis began to check in. Deserts. Now we live in some. Global warming, hurricanes, drought. And then, of course, some other evils like corruption, slavery, racism, ethnicity, ISIS, Al-Shabaab. All of these evils. Sin just came to destroy the good life that God had created us for. That's why we feel so bad when we see 147 lives butchered by some people who are just controlled by sin and hate. We hate it. But each one of us has been damaged by sin. At times I do some things and I feel pained. So why did I do that? I should have enjoyed that more. There's a time I just said something really mean to my son. And later I just thought, and he came back to me crying. He's 10 years old. I said, I know I was tired. I know that I was just pissed off by some things, maybe traffic. But why did I have to say something bad to my son? And I went back to him, hugged him, and cried with him and said, I'm so sorry that I did that. Sin as a way of just making you feel, why do I do this? I don't like this. I feel like I'm in prison. I'm reaching out for the good life, but something else is just dragging me back. Whereas once in a while we may enjoy the pleasures of sin. By and large, there's a longing in everyone who is sitting here today. A longing for good. A longing to get out of the hate. Hate takes a lot of energy. We don't want to keep hating our daddy for what he did. We want to be released. There's a desire, struggle to be a better person. You see, what I hate about sin, it takes away the beauty that God gave us, limits us. We want to be free, free to serve God, free to be great, free to love others, to be in good relationships. But then we mess up those things because of sin. But even much more importantly, sin hurts God. The God who created us for good life, it gets hurt. And you see, movies are really about that. Sin comes in, everything goes south. As the movies tell us the stories, someone cheats and tears flow. Someone steals and bullets fly. Good girls are abused and enslaved, and someone has to come and save them. Terrorists blow up the place, and Jack Bauer walks in. And you enjoy it. Because something is going to be restored. It's like we want a restoration to the good life. Wrong choices have consequences. And sin really calls for an intervention. That's what life is about. A desire for good life and relationships. The mess that causes the evil and evil people that we see, they attempt to restore life to what it's meant to be. A prison break, you can call it a rescue operation, freedom, reconciliation, whatever you call it. Man's greatest occupation since the fall has been this: how can I get Eden back? How can I get a good life back? We keep asking, how can I live in a better way? That's why you come to church. You would be in bed because you're reaching out for something. You want better. You want a way out. Well, there's one of the characters around the cross that I'm sure feels us. In our struggle, to get to the better life. You know, he longed to get back to his family. He had been in prison, we don't know for how long, for a while. And I'm sure he prayed about a rescue. Maybe he thought about it. Maybe they dreamed of being released to go and see his wife and his family. We don't know. But like all of us, the authorities had imprisoned him. Like sin has imprisoned us. The authorities and sin had imprisoned this guy. So we would like to investigate this guy today and see what we learn in our quest for the good life. The character today is a man called Barrabas. Well, that was brief. I'd like to invite today someone who is going to help me go through this sermon. You must have seen him on television. I want to invite you. So would you put your hands together and invite Larry Mavuno to...
I expected a bit of a bigger applause, but I'll make do with that. Is it possible for me to walk back again and maybe let's see if they can be a bit more enthusiastic?
No, brother, we're usually humble in this church, so please have your seat.
Thank you.
Come on one more time. Let's appreciate Larry.
That's more like it. Thank you, Mavuno.
Larry, you know, you're one of the guys who graduated out of Man Enough. So you're Man Enough, right?
I think I am, yes, absolutely.
You're not married yet?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mystery, that. Okay. And I graduated from Battalion 5 of Man Enough, so that was a while back.
Yeah, Battalion 5. Now we're on Battalion 12.
Think of that, 7 battalions ago.
Yeah. Well, don't worry, we have some good people here. I know you don't come to this church, you go to Mavuno downtown. But you could stick around this month and you're going to meet some people.
I think I might want to try that. You see, the thing is, I love Mavuno downtown, but it's way too small. So the pool of people you're choosing from is very limited.
But it's still not worked for you yet. Anyway, welcome. Welcome, Larry.
Thank you.
It's good to have you here. Do you watch movies? Which is your favorite one?
I watch movies. I love movies. I love the Iron Man franchise. Dudes, we all love Tony Stark, right? Yeah. Come on, just admit it. Tony Stark is cool, but I just watched Fast and Furious 7, and it's amazing. It's got everything I look for in a movie: drama, fast cars, guns, people dying. It's perfect.
That's what you enjoy.
Oh, no, especially not that last part.
Well, we talked about intervention. That's what we want in movies. We want intervention.
Right.
Of course, the bad guy is dying, but it's in the movies, so that's okay. Well, we'd like to talk a little bit about this character, and I'm glad you're here for us to go through it.
And before you do that, maybe you want to paint the background for us and just give the context before we talk about Barrabas. What is the context really around this guy?
Now, you know this guy Barrabas is rarely known. Really, we read about him in passing. That is a guy who missed his cross. He was to take the cross that Jesus took. And let me just paint the picture. You see, Jesus is arrested. There's a violent encounter there. Someone's ear is cut off and then restored. You know the story. And then they begin to take Jesus to the place where they would try him. And they walk for a while. It's probably about, with what they were doing and the company, they took about 30 minutes, maybe 1 hour. It's around midnight.
And that was before Kidero's no roundabouts rule.
Yeah. They could just walk through the roads. No roundabouts. And it's about 2 now. And then something happens between 2 and 8.
Events occur in real time.
Oh, that's nifty.
Have you watched that?
That is nifty. We've got a whole 24 thing going on here.
Well, so the following takes place between 2 a.m. and 8 a.m. There are 6 trials, would you believe?
Right.
6 trials happen at night, early in the morning. Trial number 1, they pulled Jesus to the residence of the former high priest called Annas. And this guy was powerful. He had been high priest 20 years before this. And he was still in charge of the place. He was like a political, religious figure.
And he just happens to be up at 2 a.m. to try somebody.
Yeah, of course. They had planned this. That's why he was up. They had planned this. They wanted this done. So they had mapped it out. They knew he would. And so they found him awake. Now, this guy, Annas, he had his 5 sons become the high priest. And he had finished gone through his sons. And now he took his son-in-law to be the high priest.
Oh, keeping it in the family.
Yeah, keeping it in the
Okay.
family. So now the son-in-law is the high priest, Caiaphas. And so they bring Jesus to this powerful figure, Annas. They don't even have any charges against him. In fact, what they do, he begins to ask him questions and say, what were you saying out on the streets? I've heard many stories about you. And you see, Jesus, conscious of the law, he says, why you bring me here? Nobody has accused me. You're not supposed to ask me what I have done.
Right.
You're supposed to have witnesses. And one of the guys thinks he's rude, so he slaps him. But really, before this former high priest, there wasn't much of a trial. They were just trying to cook up some charges so that they take them to the high priest, and then these charges could be confirmed.
So this first trial doesn't quite take off.
First trial, they bring together some people who would give false witness. They coach them, and they say, when we go to the next place, this is what you would say. And then they push him on to the next place.
All right. So trial 2.
Trial number 2, they take him to the high priest, Caiaphas. This is around 3 a.m. At that point. And they bring Jesus in. Caiaphas sits in his powerful seat where he's really controlled by his father-in-law. And this is what happens. They bring these false witnesses. They had coached them. They begin to say, this man did that and the other. The Bible says they did not even agree with each other. It was a mockery of a trial, kangaroo court.
Right.
They didn't agree with each other. So at last Jesus decided to help them. He says, hey guys, I am the Messiah. This is why I was born. I'm the Son of God. And they said,
now that is an accusation. That's something they can work with.
you've given us something to work with, blasphemy. And so they write down the charge is blasphemy, and they forward him to the next court, which was now the official really court. 70 elders. This is
Right.
trial number 3 now.
Hang on. So this is past 3 a.m. now. The 70 elders are somehow available to try Jesus in the dead of the night.
Of course, this had been planned, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, this had been planned. So 70 guys are there. The high priest is a 71st guy. And they sit down and they bring the evidence. Ranger, you understand this. You're a lawyer. As a lawyer at some point. And they bring the charges. They read them before these guys. And then they make a vote.
Right.
Actually, they were debating a bit, and then he said again, after this, you're going to see the Son of Man stand up, sitting at the right-hand side of God. And they shouted, they say, that's blasphemy.
Okay.
We don't even need to listen anymore. He's condemned. They say he must die.
There's no law against self-incriminating. Lawyers have that, right?
Actually, there is. That's why we're saying this was a sham of a trial. Number one, they tried him at night.
Okay.
According to the Jewish laws, you can't try anyone before 8 in the morning. They tried him around 3, 4 in the morning. So that was wrong. Number 2, you were supposed to be listened to. And then after the witnesses, they were to give a verdict.
Okay.
But after the verdict, they were to take a day or 2 to fast.
Okay. All right.
Wow. To fast and pray about it. You know, that was a practice, because if they fast and pray about it, they might think, maybe we didn't do a right thing. And they may come back and either affirm the charge or the verdict, or actually reverse it. And many times in history we are told they reversed it. So they'll take a day or 2, sometimes a week, if it's execution that they have passed, and they will think through it. This never happened.
But this is the 70 guys do try him, and then that's not even the last one.
It's not even the last one. You see, they try him, they say blasphemy, he should die. But the Romans were occupying town. So according to their law, the Jews could not execute anyone according to their laws. So they had to take him to the Roman courts so that they may be given permission to execute Jesus.
Right.
And so they drag him just next door, about 15 minutes walk to the next place, to a guy called Pilate.
Okay.
Now, again, I wonder, how come Pilate was actually awake?
Everybody's awake this night. Like everybody who's important to the story is just awake. It's like a TV show.
Yeah. Well, you're familiar to that. Everyone is awake. And so they bring him to Pilate, and I don't need to say much about that because we'll get back to it next week or the week after. They bring him to Pilate, the leading official. He tries him. He's the only person who really tried him in terms of a legal trial.
Right.
Ask him some questions. Jesus doesn't bother to respond much. And eventually they say, I find nothing wrong with this guy. He's really innocent. And Pilate understands, because he's trying to get himself out of a hook. He doesn't want to be the one to say, okay, you kill him, because he doesn't see any reason.
He's
So
not
the
taking
Bible
responsibility.
Bible says he knew that it was because of their jealousy envy that they brought him. So he wanted to get himself off the hook. But then they make a lot of noise, and he said, hey, by the way, my enemy, one of the guys we don't agree with, is in town, Herod. So why don't I pass him there? In fact, he got a loophole. He said, hey, by the way, you're from Galilee. Oh, yeah, you're Galilean. All right, you go to Herod and let him be the one to pass this judgment.
So hopefully you can also find a way to entrap him.
Yeah. Trial number 5 is before Herod. Herod just mocks him, asks him some questions, and sends him back. He says nothing really wrong. He comes back to Pilate, 6th trial. This is around 6 in the morning, the Bible tells us. Goes through a trial, and Pilate says, this guy is not guilty. But the guys shout, no, give us, release one of the bad guys and crucify this guy. So that's how we get here. 6 trials, one morning.
6 trials, it's not a morning per se, by Kenyan standards, that's a night. 6 trials in one night, and it's a verdict that would really end up changing history. But, so these people demanded the release of Barrabas. So we're going back to Barrabas again.
Yeah, that's true. In fact, as we go to Barrabas, I find it interesting because this was a mistrial. False witnesses, no good evidence produced. They declare Jesus innocent. And then at the end, they declare him guilty, and he's not proven guilty. They just declared him guilty. And so this is when we come back then to the guy, Barrabas. So the incident. Would you please read for us Matthew chapter 27, 11 to 26, and just see this guy and bring out some facts out of the story. So let's go together to Matthew chapter 27, verse 11 to 26.
Meanwhile, Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, are you the king of the Jews? You have said so, Jesus replied. When he was accused by the chief priests and the elders, he gave no answer. Then Pilate asked him, don't you hear the testimony they're bringing up against you? But Jesus made no reply, not even to a single charge, to the great amazement of the governor. Now it was the governor's custom at the festival to release a prisoner chosen by the crowd. At the time, they had a well-known prisoner whose name was Jesus Barrabas. So when the crowd had gathered, Pilate asked them, which one do you want me to release to you? Jesus Barrabas or Jesus, who is called the Messiah? For he knew it was out of self-interest that they had handed Jesus over to him. While Pilate was sitting on the judge's seat, his wife sent this message, don't have anything to do with that innocent man, for I have suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him.
In fact, just before you continue, I love it, the power of women. This lady knows this guy is about to pass a judgment against an innocent person, gets a dream, and passes a note. Don't you love that? The power of women.
It's awesome.
Well, you don't understand it until you get married, but...
I feel like I'm being discriminated against here.
Well, I'm just making a hint. But really, that's an important note.
Right.
Actually, she had had, and she wasn't like a Jew. She wasn't like relating to this God. But she had a voice saying, this guy is innocent. Please, Pilate, stay clear of him. Go ahead.
Okay, verse 20. But the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and to have Jesus executed. Which of the two do you want me to release to you? Asked the governor. Barabbas, they answered. What shall I do then with Jesus who's called the Messiah? Pilate asked. They all answered, crucify him. Why? What crime has he committed? Asked Pilate. But they shouted all the louder, crucify him. When Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, but that instead an uproar was starting, he took water and washed his hands in front of the crowd. I am innocent of this man's blood. He said, it is your responsibility. All the people answered, his blood is on us and on our children. Then he released Barabbas to them, but he had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified.
Interesting. Now let's talk a little bit about this man. There are many words used about this man. He was a rebel, he was a murderer, he was an insurrectionist. What is that?
Insurrectionist.
Yeah.
It's a big word, Pastor Thomas might know.
All right. Really, that's someone like, the Mau Mau guys. They were trying to get the people to fight against those who had occupied our country.
Trying to overthrow the government.
Yeah, so just trying to say we don't like the Romans. We need to fight against them. And in the process, he had murdered some people. He was a robber. And all manner of words to incriminate this guy. are used. Now, he had been tried in the proper way, leave alone this Jesus trial. He had been tried in a proper way.
Right.
He had been put in prison.
So he was rightfully in prison. It was not a sham trial.
Rightfully condemned to die. And he was in a fortress called Fortress of Antonio, which is very close to where Pilate is.
Right.
And so I can imagine when Pilate is doing his thing, his trial thing, and people are shouting that Barrabas and the two other guys who were to be crucified, because this was their Passover.
Okay.
They were to die. So their crosses, the three of them were ready. The three crosses were ready. Barabbas knew this is my day.
And then the crowd is calling out his name
and
now.
they're calling out his name. And it's just about 100 meters away from where he is in prison. And this trial is going on, and he's listening, and they're saying, Barabbas, Barabbas. And say, okay, my day has come.
Yeah.
And I wonder, Larry, was he remorseful about it? Was he even thinking, okay, this is my day, let me say my last prayers, or let me send a text or a tweet to my mom or something?
He was probably like, I haven't had my last meal.
Yeah,
This is happening way too fast. But I guess when you're a criminal of that sort, do you feel remorse when you're about to die, or some sense of
I don't know whether he
resignation?
had been hardened or something, and just say, all right, let me go to the cross. I mean, with those words on your face, you probably don't feel nothing. But I'm sure he was afraid. Do you know why? I mean, the crucifixion, the way they crucified people, which is where the word excruciating pain comes from. The kind of pain that someone went through during the crucifixion was immoral, let's say. In fact, one of the philosophers said they never even dreamt that a Roman citizen would come near a cross because it was just not right.
Right.
You know, you would sue the whole government bankrupt as a Roman citizen if you went to the cross, because it was terrible. You see, the way they crucified you and then they put a little rest on your feet. What they wanted you to do is to keep pulling yourself up to breathe,
Right.
and then you go down. Pull yourself up to breathe, so you could breathe. And that was to make your time on the cross as long as a day or more. That
Okay,
you
so
could
it's
stay
supposed
on
to
the
be a
cross for
slow,
long time.
painful death.
A slow, painful death. In fact, they say nobody has ever been as creative, in the way to kill someone. It was painful. So Barabbas hears people cry, and he says, I deserve that cross. I mean, I did what I did.
Yeah.
I'm convicted. I deserve that cross.
Okay.
And then someone, of course, comes to release him. And he hears some footsteps. He knows, and he hears people saying, crucify him, crucify. So he thinks,
And he's
I'm
the one
one
who's getting crucified, yes.
Yeah, it's us.
Yeah.
And maybe they hugged each other. I don't know how tight they were. And they began to say, okay, guys, let's go down as heroes.
It's been real. Cheers.
But let's go back to this Barrabas. I mean, you did something that probably they didn't notice. You read Jesus Barabbas or Jesus
the Messiah.
Christ. Actually, in the original manuscripts, we find, and historians have confirmed that Barabbas is a strange name. Bar, in the language of a day, means son of.
Okay.
Abbas is a father. So he was called like son of a father. Who is called that? I mean, everyone is son of his father. But that's a name that we are given here. So he really didn't have a given name.
Right.
It's not written here. But in the original manuscripts, it said he was called son of a father because his father was a rabbi,
Right.
a famous guy in town. And so they knew him as the father, a rabbi, the way we call fathers in the Roman Catholic Church. He was that kind of a person. And everybody knew him in town, son of a rabbi. But what was his first name? His first name was actually Yeshua, which means Jesus. So there were two Jesuses who were being offered here. So when Pilate said, okay, guys, I want myself off the hook. So he thought quickly, one of these guys who is to die is called Jesus as well. So why don't I do this? Let me offer these two guys. Let me offer Jesus, who is your teacher and Messiah and Savior and really innocent. And this other Jesus, who is a notorious criminal, who killed some of your sons and wives. And let me see who you're going to pick.
So there's no loss really. You're still getting a Jesus dying. It just matters which Jesus it is.
Jesus
But is a
is gonna
Jesus going to
die.
die tonight?
But for Pilate, I think he wanted himself off the hook. He was under investigation, actually, during that time from Rome. So he wanted to play things well. He wanted to please the Jews. He wanted to stay in good books with Rome. And so he decided, let the people choose. And, of course, they chose the bad Jesus.
Okay.
So they released Jesus Barabbas, or Yeshua Barabbas. So Jesus Barabbas You know, the soldiers come to his door. He knows my time is over. They open the door and they say, "Go, you're free."
Right.
Can you imagine the shock? I mean, I was waiting
You're
to
letting
die.
me free? What's up with that?
Yeah, what has
Is this
happened?
some kind of joke?
Yeah. I'm sure he couldn't believe. Maybe
Yeah.
he thought I'm going to walk out and they're going to shoot me from the back or something. I watched too much movie. But he begins to walk out and he realizes actually he's free.
He's going free. Yes.
And then the other guys are picked and he sees his cross right there, the two crosses of the other criminals, his buddies. And Jesus is the one now carrying Barrabas' cross.
Whoa. That is definitely a plot twist. If somebody was writing this, that's a huge plot twist. So the guy who should have died rightfully is freed, and somebody who has had a sham trial is the one that's going to the cross.
A terrorist is freed.
A terrorist is freed.
The man of peace, who preached peace everywhere he went, takes the cross of this guy. Well, I don't know what Barrabas did. I am sure, I can only imagine because the Bible doesn't tell us. What did he go out to do? Did he even go home to look for his wife and family? Or did he decide to follow Jesus and see, is this for real?
What happens now?
Or maybe he was just thinking, if I follow these guys, they might change their minds. And so he probably just got out of town as quickly as he could. Well, they chose Barrabas to set him free. They chose to set Barrabas free, and they took Jesus, and he took his cross. You know, the one point of history that we find from this story is this. Because Jesus died on a cross that was meant for Barrabas. And really for all of us, I can choose to live in freedom. Can you imagine now Barrabas finally had a choice? I can actually walk free. I don't have to die for my sins. I can walk free. That's
because
what
Jesus died for him.
Because Jesus died for him. So Jesus takes his cross, Barrabas' cross. I'm sure that cross had Barrabas' name on it. Jesus takes it, and Barrabas goes free. Relief for one, agony for the other.
But it sounds like a scandal. It sounds like a big scandal for me. And when there's a scandal, who do you call, Mavuno? Come on. When there's a scandal, who do you call? Of course, they call in Olivia daughter of paupers. Listen, this needs to be managed right now because the governor has let somebody go for free and somebody else, a terrorist is out on the loose. Yeah. So everybody's going to freak out. So you need to fix that and you need to manage the messaging around this.
And I'm sure some of the guys who supported him were very free. They went and hugged him. The guy had all grown hair. He was different from, the time when he went in. But this is a scandal that Jesus was been actually declared innocent by the governor and then given over to be killed, is crucified. But the man who was condemned rightfully is set free. That's a scandal.
Absolutely, yes.
So anyway, Jesus carried his cross. He got some help on the way. And he went all the way to the place of crucifixion. It was hard because he had been flogged so badly. He couldn't be recognized. He was really bloody, to use that word. But, he went to the cross with a lot of conviction because to him, this is what the world had been waiting for. We talked about intervention from heaven. This is it. Intervention has arrived. Relief is in the air.
But Pastor S, this sounds like a really big deal to me at this particular moment. Do people realize what is going on? Do they realize the significance of this?
I don't think so. But I guess they got to learn what was going on later. But can you imagine, since the Passover happened in Egypt, every year they celebrated this and they slaughtered animals to cover for their sins. You remember we talked about the desire to be set free, the desire for the good life. And because you're sinful and this sin is holding you back, they used to sacrifice animals to cover up for their sins. In fact, in that Passover, there were probably about 4 million people in town, 4 million people in Jerusalem. 250,000 animals died that weekend to cover for the sins of man. That was a big feast. 250,000. Blood flowed in town. People were celebrating because they were feeling a relief out of their sin. But you know why this was a big deal? Because it was a fulfillment of prophecy. Lots of prophecies were fulfilled. In Genesis chapter 3, it talks about the seed of a woman will crush the serpent's head. This was it. That's Jesus dying on the cross. He crushed the serpent's head. We talk about the Ark of Noah, and how it was a symbol of salvation. This was really pointing to a piece of wood that would be for the salvation of the world. We talk about Isaac, who was to be crucified on Mount Moriah. Do you know Mount Moriah is really where Jesus was crucified? That's why Isaac was to be slaughtered. And then the Bible says God provided for himself a lamb. In the original language, it says God will provide himself. He will give himself to be a lamb, which was fulfilled from Genesis 22. This was really the cross. Jesus, God himself, died as a sacrificial lamb. From Exodus, a release from the land of captivity to the promised land. Passover is fulfilled in Jesus. The wilderness, the snake of bronze that was lifted up so that those who look at it may be healed. This was Jesus who is lifted up on the cross, and people look at him and they get delivered. Rahab, when she needed rescue, and she talked to the spies who came and hid them, and she was told, when the army is rolling into town, then put out a scarlet cord. When we see that scarlet cord, we're going to come and save you. Again, a sign of blood flowing on the cross. Job used to cry and say, wouldn't God provide a mediator, one who would talk on behalf of human beings to God himself? Jesus was exactly that. Jonah was in the fish for 3 days. Jesus was in the ground for 3 days, and he rose up. And earlier he said, no sign will be given this generation except the sign of Jonah. Jesus wanted so badly to do this.
Wow. It's an incredible story, and looking back at all of those other pointers leading to this moment, and now at least, I don't know if people still realize the significance of that.
Yeah, and we're saying because he died, I can choose to live in freedom. Let me ask you, Larry, you've been asking me questions. Let me ask you as well. This is what you do on TV, so let's switch.
I'm not very good on this side of the questions.
It's very easy for us to say Barrabas needed to die. He was a terrorist, he was a murderer, insurrectionist. He was all of these things. Do you see yourself in him? Do you ever see a little Barrabas inside of you? A son of the Father looking for the Father?
In truth, yes. Absolutely. And maybe people don't know this, but in a previous life, it's an interesting thing you said, the Father in the Catholic sense. I was in a Catholic seminary. I wanted to be a priest.
Oh,
Father
really?
Larry Mado, that would have sounded nice, right? They don't believe me. Look at them shaking your heads, judging me. And I obviously deviated from that way, and every day is a constant trying to find your way back.
Yeah, and I know you've been in this journey of faith, like I have been. But Larry, when I look at me, I see actually Barrabas. He was a murderer. I haven't killed anyone, but there are times I've really wished some people dead. Especially some politicians. This is a good way to confess. There's some people I would have rejoiced inside if they died. There's some people that I don't see their, when I'm at a certain level, I don't see their value add in this world. So there are times I've wished death. There's times I've wished bad things on people. Do you know those guys who cut you in traffic?
Don't get me started.
And you wouldn't mind if you found a little ahead somebody had rolled or something. Well, not like you want them to die. You just want them to learn a lesson. How many of you have wished that in your heart at some point? Yeah. Murderers all around here. We have wished
or some of them are the ones that cut in front of you. I see you.
What about, the guy was an insurrectionist. Trying to find freedom for the people. That's not really bad. These guys, Romans, were the bad guys. They were occupying Palestine that time. And so, the people fought for our freedom, and they are heroes right now. But leave alone that. Have you ever gotten guys around where you work to speak against the management and say, these guys are not treating us well? Well, where you were working before.
Well, some friends of mine turned the whole boss bashing thing into a team sport. Like everybody needs to contribute something. Kama ni wanaongea peke yako, if what gets around, you're the one who's in trouble. So everybody needs to contribute equally. Then you're all exposed if it ever comes back.
And there's a good feeling when you're saying, this president or this boss of ours, just negative vibe against authority or just breaking rules. Did you ever break traffic rules?
No.
Okay. You're a good guy.
Well, a few here and there.
Yeah, once in a while. I do once in a while, especially when I'm running to church or something like that. But we get to break some rules.
It's for the greater good. You're coming to preach to people.
Yeah, for the greater good.
Yeah, absolutely.
That should pass in any court of law. So we're talking about a bad guy, but
Right.
it's very easy for us to say that guy needed to die, actually, but not us.
But listen, it's a lovely thing. So Barabbas is set free. They murder God, and it's all for the freedom of men like Barabbas, who does not deserve this freedom.
Which is all of us. And you know, because of a longing for freedom, let me tell you, I think my knowing God has been the best of experiences. Just knowing that I am set free from my sin. Not that I'm perfect. I get it wrong many times, Larry. But you know, just to know someone took the cross for me, and I don't have to take it. And you know, Larry, a lot of us cannot take that. We just feel like we need to pay for our own sins. I mean, you feel like when you get an accident, it's because I did something wrong the other day. You want to pay for your own sins. But Jesus said you don't have to. You can choose freedom. Can you imagine Barrabas? Let's imagine Barrabas. After this, let's imagine he followed Jesus and came to the cross and stood there and watched Jesus die. What do you think was going on in his mind?
It's like there is some messed up stuff going down right here.
Yeah.
Like I don't even understand half of this. I'm free, and there's a dude on the cross who before today, like he's done nothing wrong, and I should have been up there, and I'm not. So I don't know what was going through his mind. It's like I don't know. I have no idea.
Well, that. But don't you think he was also having some conversations with his fellow guys? And say,
Right.
hey, don't worry, guys. We'll see you in the next world. The two guys, because they were his friends, they did crime together, and they're
Right.
hanging there, and he's down there. Maybe he was the one saying, don't tell Jesus to
Like
forgive
that,
you.
yes,
What's wrong
yeah.
with you? I can imagine. But I wonder what kind of life Barabbas lived after that. I wonder, did he go home and decide to be a priest? He said, because of the way nimeponea chupu chupu, do you speak Swahili? Nimeponea. I mean, God has just rescued me, so I should be a preacher. I should be
Right.
a good man. I should be able to tell others a good way. Did he follow Jesus?
I wonder, or maybe does he live prison as like Cook in Empire? Cook is coming home. So he was sort of like Barabbas is coming home. There's flies are getting out of his way. The light dims. There's I don't know, little birds running out of his way. Evil is back in the world. Who knows? We have no idea.
You know, sometimes we actually celebrate bad guys, and probably we were celebrated in town. But do you know why Jesus took that cross? Because he wanted our freedom. Mavuno, Jesus took that cross that you should have taken, because he wanted your freedom, to choose freedom for yourself. Because he died, I can choose to live in freedom. Well, Larry, 700 years before this event, a prophet had prophesied. Listen to this, I love it. In fact, why don't you read it for us?
Isaiah 53:3-8. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and familiar with suffering. Surely he took up our infirmities and carried our sorrows. Yet we considered him stricken by God, smitten by him, and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him, and by his wounds we are healed. We all, like sheep, have gone astray. Each of us has turned to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. He was led like a lamb to the slaughter, and as sheep before her shearers is silent, so he did not open his mouth. By oppression and judgment he was taken away. And who can speak of his descendants? For he was cut off from the land of the living. For the transgression of my people he was stricken.
I love that scripture because it says, this is why he died, so that I may choose freedom. From disease, from the sin. You know that cry we talked about for man to want a better life? This is really why he died. But unfortunately, Larry, we still choose many times to live in the limitation of sin.
All right, but when you talk about this character, I can only imagine where he went from that, as you've been saying. What did he do that morning? What does he do for the rest of his life? Because the Bible does not tell us.
It doesn't tell us because Barrabas is really about us. He's not about the one who died many years ago. Well, thanks, Larry. I appreciate you.
My pleasure.
Would we just appreciate Larry and God willing, we're going to do some conversations with Larry through this month. Well, let me bring this to a close, good people. Barrabas really represents you and I. As I said, you may not be a murderer, but I know you've hated someone. I know you've had the wishes I've talked about. You may not be all that, every bad name that we have given to this guy. But I know some of you don't pay your taxes or don't declare some income. I know there's some Barrabas in each and every one of us. I feel this guy. As I read him, I found myself convicted that I may not have taken it to the level that Barrabas took it, but there's a little Barrabas in each one of us. I know Barrabas enjoyed the freedom, however crazy or wicked he might have been. I know he enjoyed the freedom, being set free. I know someone here in this church who several years ago released themselves to Jesus and said, I accept your forgiveness. I receive your freedom. There's someone sitting here who keeps coming to church because of a measure of freedom that you feel. That you don't need to hold on to your wickedness, to your compromise, to your sin, and the consequences thereof. That you can release it. You can actually receive the freedom that God gives us. Would you embrace the freedom of a cross, the freedom of forgiveness, or would you decide to go ahead and still pay for sins that were already paid for? See, we stand at the cross today. The cross is right behind me. And we are looking up at the innocent King, Jesus himself, who hangs there. And he's offering freedom. He's offering grace. The cross demands a response. That's the greatest lesson, that Jesus is our substitute of sin. Every other week someone comes to me. This week specifically someone came to me and said, I hate my husband. He's kicked me out of my family. I'm carrying unforgiveness in my heart. I wish I could put some poison in his food and he would die, because she was broken hearted. And again, I thought about the cross, and I thought about what she's carrying as a burden. And I talked to her, and she cried in my office and said, you could actually let it go. You don't have to carry this burden. Sitting on a seat next to you is someone who carries some hate against someone else. Someone who has lived in the limitation and complexity of sexual compromise. It's someone else who has struggled with pornography. Maybe to your right, someone else who has struggled with corruption and taken some money here and there, or given some money here and there. Now we stand here today to say, because he died, I can choose to live in freedom. I don't have to live in the mess of my sin. What does that freedom mean? As I bring us to prayer, it means, number one, that instead of us living in an environment and a community of injustice and pollution and lawlessness and all the wickedness around us, because of a cross, we as a community have been sent out to bring healing to our environment, to make our place a little bit better, our country a little bit better, but more on a personal note, that you don't have to carry your fears, your shame, your guilt. Maybe you committed an abortion or sponsored one. You really don't have to live in that pain. You can bring that pain to the foot of a cross. You see, this is the only religion that gives this kind of freedom. That you don't have to pay or work for the forgiveness of your sin. It's a scandal that someone else died on the cross to pay for your sin. All you need to do is to walk away free and not stick in your sin. What about your relationships? You can make a choice today because of a cross to heal the wounds of your heart, to forgive a dude who so deeply hurt you, to forgive the man who raped you, maybe to forgive a dad who deserted you, to forgive your workmate who made up a story against you and you paid for it dearly, that you could live in the freedom from bitterness, freedom from hate. And you could even bring some healing and reconciliation to some of your relationships. What if everyone who came to church here today, and those of us who may hear this, what if we made a choice that because of a cross, we will not make the cross of no effect, that we will choose to receive our healing and our freedom and exercise it in our own lives? What if in this broken world of ISIS and Al-Shabaab and divorce and separation and stabbing each other on the back, there were a people who chose, we're going to live differently because someone died to set us free. We don't have to hit back at someone who cuts us on the road. We can pray for them and bless them. What aches inside of you for redemption? What slavery do you want to be released from? What freedom do you desire? Personal, relational, communal. What is it you're reaching out to receive because it's available in Jesus Christ? This is a message of the cross. And so this is what I want us to do right now. The ushers are handing out some little pieces of paper. You could pull out a pen right now. And as we sing this song, this is what I'd like you to do. You've lived in some imprisonment or limitation of sin. Maybe you've carried fear or shame or guilt or emotional pain. Or maybe physical pain, disease. By his wounds we have been healed, we read. Or maybe you've been carrying this anger inside of you. Maybe an addiction that you want a prison break. You want, the good guy, the hero is Jesus Christ in the movie to come and set you free, open the door and tell you go home. Maybe it's been spiritual oppression for you. You just find yourself oppressed, maybe depression, maybe lack, maybe hate. Whatever it is, I want you to pick up a pen right now and I want you to write it down on that piece of paper. Because we want to pray over it and we want to proclaim freedom right now. And we're going to do an act at the end of this. But write it right now, whatever it is. Maybe you've not given your life to Christ. And there's a lot of things to write. And you don't need to write all of them. Maybe you just need to write your name. And say, I bring myself to the cross. I want to release everything. I want to receive the freedom of forgiveness of sin. I come to the cross like Barrabas. I walk away free. I choose to walk away, not to go back to the life I had been convicted of. So we're going to sing together, Here I Am to Worship. Worship is about coming to the cross and saying, Jesus, I receive my forgiveness. It was given. I receive my freedom, my prison break. Here I am to worship.
So here